Hello, welcome to my channel. So today I read Paul Bunyan. So this time I try to draw a picture for the story. So let's get started. Paul Bunyan. The forest was very wide. It stretched far beyond what the eyes could see. Tall trees stood close together, their branches gently touching the sky. In the early morning, a soft mist covered the ground. The air was cool and still. Only the quiet sound of wind moving through the leaves could be heard. Somewhere deep inside this forest, there lived a very unusual child. His name was Paul. Paul was not like other children. Even when he was born, he was already very big. His hands were large, his feet were strong, and his voice, even as a baby, was deep and warm like distant thunder. His parents loved him very much. They built a small wooden house at the edge of the forest, but soon the house became too small. Paul kept growing. Day by day, little by little, he became taller. His parents would look up at him and smile softly. "You are growing so fast," his mother would say. Paul would laugh quietly. I just feel big," he would answer. The forest became his home. He would walk slowly between the trees, being careful not to step on small plants or animals. He liked the sound of the wind. He liked the smell of the earth. And most of all, he liked the feeling of being alone in a peaceful place. One morning, as the sun rose gently over the trees, Paul heard a soft sound. It was not the wind, it was not the birds, it was something new. A small cry. Paul stopped walking. He listened carefully. There it was again. A soft, lonely sound. He followed it, step by step, very slowly, so the ground would not shake too much. Then, behind a group of trees, he saw something. A small animal. It was a young ox. Its fur was a beautiful deep blue, like the sky just before night. The ox looked at Paul with wide, gentle eyes. It was alone. Paul knelt down slowly. "Hello," he said softly. The ox made a quiet sound. It was not afraid. Paul reached out his hand. The ox stepped closer. Their eyes met in the quiet morning light. "You are alone too," Paul whispered. The ox leaned gently against his hand. From that day, they were never alone again. Paul named him Babe. Babe the blue ox. They spent many days together in the forest, walking slowly, resting under tall trees, listening to the wind. Sometimes Paul would talk. "I wonder how far this forest goes," he would say. Babe would listen quietly. Sometimes Babe would walk ahead and Paul would follow. Sometimes Paul would carry large rocks and Babe would help pull them. They walked together, moved together, and rested together. The seasons passed gently. In spring, soft green leaves appeared on the trees. In summer, warm sunlight filled the forest. In autumn, leaves turned gold and red, falling slowly to the ground. And in winter, snow covered everything in soft white silence. Paul and Babe watched it all. One winter evening, as snow fell quietly from the sky, Paul sat beside Babe. The world was very still. Babe, Paul said softly, do you ever wonder what's beyond the forest? Babe looked at him. The snow landed gently on his blue fur. Paul smiled. I think there's more out there. The wind moved softly around them. The trees whispered in the cold night, and somewhere deep inside, Paul felt something new. A quiet feeling, a feeling of going somewhere, of seeing something more. He looked out into the distance, beyond the trees, beyond the snow. I think we should go someday, he said. Babe let out a soft, calm sound. It felt like an answer. And in the quiet winter night, under the falling snow, a journey began. The winter slowly came to an end. The cold air softened little by little. Snow began to melt quietly under the gentle sun. Drop by drop, water returned to the earth. One morning, Paul stood at the edge of the forest. The ground was still wet from melting snow. Small streams of water moved softly between the roots of the trees. Babe stood beside him. His blue fur shined softly in the morning light. Paul looked far into the distance. Beyond the forest, the land opened wide. He took a slow breath. It's time, he said gently. Babe made a calm, low sound. Together, they took their first step out of the forest. The trees slowly disappeared behind them. The air felt different. It was more open, more free. The sky stretched wide above them, soft clouds moving slowly across the blue. They walked at an easy pace, step by step, without hurry. Along the way, they met many small rivers. Some were easy to cross, others were wide and deep. One day, they came to a river that was too wide to walk through. The water moved quickly. It made a deep, steady sound. Paul stood quietly for a moment. Then he looked around. Tall trees stood nearby. He nodded softly. I think we can make a way, he said. With careful hands, Paul lifted large trees from the ground. He placed them gently across the river. One by one, he built a bridge. Babe watched him, standing calmly by the water. bridge was ready. Paul stepped onto it slowly. It was strong. The wood held steady under his weight. He turned and smiled. "Come on, babe." Babe walked across the bridge. His steps were quiet and sure. When they reached the other side, Paul looked back at the river. The bridge rested there, simple and strong. "Maybe someone else will use it someday," he said. They continued walking. Days passed into night, and nights into mornings. Sometimes they slept under the open sky. Paul would lie on the soft ground, looking up at the stars. They were small and bright, scattered across the dark sky. "Do you see them, babe?" he would ask quietly. Babe would rest beside him. The night air was cool and calm. In the distance, soft sounds of animals could be heard. It was peaceful. One afternoon, they came to a wide empty land. There were no trees, no rivers, only soft hills and dry ground. The wind moved gently across the open space. It carried a low, whispering sound. Paul walked slowly. "This place feels different," he said. Babe lowered his head slightly, feeling the dry earth beneath his feet. There was very little water. The ground looked tired. Paul stopped walking. He looked around carefully, then he had an idea. He knelt down and placed his large hand on the ground. "It needs water," he said softly. He stood up and looked toward the hills. Far away, he could see a river. It was small, but it flowed steadily. Paul walked toward it. When he reached the river, he thought quietly. Then, with slow and careful movements, he began to dig. His hands moved through the earth, creating a long path. The soil was soft and warm. Babe stood nearby, watching closely. Little by little, Paul made a wide channel. It stretched from the river all the way back to the dry land. When he finished, he stepped back. Water began to move. At first it was slow. Then it followed more freely. The channel filled with clear water. It moved across the land, bringing life with it. The dry ground began to change. The air felt softer. Small plants slowly began to grow. Paul watched quietly. A gentle smile appeared on his face. "It's better now," he said. Babe made a soft, happy sound. They stayed there for a while, resting, watching the land become alive again. Then one morning, they stood up together. The journey was not over. There was still more to see, more place to go. Paul looked ahead. The horizon stretched far away. "Let's keep going," he said softly. Babe stepped forward. Once again, they began to walk, slowly, calmly, into the white, quiet world. The day moved slowly. The sky was wide and soft above them. Clouds drifted quietly like thoughts passing through a calm mind. Paul and Babe kept walking. Their steps were steady. Their pace was gentle. They did not hurry. One morning, they came to a place filled with tall trees once again. But this forest felt different. The trees were older. Their trunks were thick and strong. Their branches stretched far and wide. The ground was covered with fallen leaves. When Paul walked, they made a soft, dry sound beneath his feet. Listen, Paul said quietly. He stopped. Babe stopped too. The forest was full of small sounds. Leaves moving, branches cracking, a distant bird calling softly. It was peaceful, but there was something else. A faint sound, not from nature. Paul listened carefully. It was a sound of tools. Wood being cut, slow, steady work. Paul followed the sound. Step by step, deep into the forest. Then he saw them, a group of people. They were walking quietly among the trees. Each person held a tool. They were cutting wood, stacking rocks, building something. Their movements were slow but tired. Their faces showed effort. One man wiped his forehead and sighed. It's too much, he said softly. We cannot finish this work alone. Paul stood at a distance for a moment. He watched them. Then he stepped forward. The ground moved gently beneath him. The people turned. Their eyes grew wide. Paul raised his hand slowly. Hello, he said in a calm voice. The people were silent. They looked at him, then at Babe. The large blue ox stood quietly beside him. After a moment, one of the workers stepped forward. Who are you? He asked. Paul smiled gently. My name is Paul, he said. This is Babe. The man looked at him. You are very big, he said softly. Paul nodded. Yes, he answered simply. There was a small silence. Then Paul looked around at the work. You are working very hard, he said. The man let out a quiet breath. Yes, he said, but there is too much to do. Paul knelt down slightly, so his voice would feel closer. May we help? He asked. The workers looked at each other. Then slowly they nodded. If you wish, the man said. From that moment, the forest became a place of shared work. Paul lifted large trees with ease. He moved them gently, placing them exactly where they were needed. Babe helped pull heavy rocks across the ground. His strength was quiet but steady. The workers watched in amazement. "Thank you," one of them said softly. Paul smiled. "It feels good to help," he replied. Days passed. The sound of work filled the forest, but it was not heavy or harsh. It was calm, rhythmic, like a slow song. Cut, lift, carry, rest. Even the wind seemed to move in the time with them. In the evening, they would sit together. The sky turned soft orange and gold. A fire burned gently. Its light flickered on their faces. One of the workers spoke quietly. "Why do you travel?" he asked. Paul looked into the fire. The flames moved slowly. "I'm not sure," he said. "I just felt that I should go." He looked up at the sky. The first stars were appearing. "I think there is something out there," he continued. "Something we are meant to see or do." The workers listened. Babe rested beside him, his breathing slow and calm. After many days, the work was finished. The forest looked peaceful again. The trees stood neatly, the ground was clear. A small village had been built nearby. Simple wooden homes, strong and warm. The workers stood together. They looked at what they had made. One of them turned to Paul. "You helped us more than we can say," he said. Paul shook his head gently. "We did it together," he replied. There was a soft silence. Then the wind moved through the trees. Leaves whispered quietly. Paul stood up. "It's time for us to go," he said. The workers nodded. They understood. "Will you come back someday?" one asked. Paul smiled softly. "Maybe," he said. Babe stepped forward. Paul followed. They walked slowly away from the forest. The people watched them go. Their large shapes grew smaller in the distance, until they became part of the horizon. The sky was wide again. The land stretched endlessly before them. Paul took a quiet breath. "Babe," he said softly, "there is still more ahead." Babe gave a gentle sound, and together they continued their journey. The journey went on. Days became weeks, weeks became seasons. The world slowly changed around them. The air grew warmer, the light of the sun felt softer. Paul and Babe walked through wide land, over gentle hills, and across quiet rivers. They did not rush. There was no need to hurry. One evening, they came to a place where the land opened wide. There were no trees, no buildings, only the soft earth and the endless sky above. The horizon stretched far away. It felt like the edge of the world. Paul stopped walking. Babe stopped beside him. The wind moved gently across the land. It brushed softly against their skin. Paul looked up. The sky was painted with evening colors. Soft orange, pale pink, and a deep quiet blue. "It's beautiful," he said in a low voice. Babe made a calm sound. They stood there for a long time, just watching, just breathing. The sun slowly began to set. The light faded gently, and the first stars appeared. Small and quiet, far away yet somehow close. Paul sat down on the ground. The earth was warm from the day. Babe rested beside him. His breathing was slow and steady. "Babe," Paul said softly, "we have seen so much." The wind moved again. It carried a soft, distant sound. "I think this place feels right," Paul continued. "There is nothing here yet." He looked out over the empty land. "But maybe that's okay." He closed his eyes for a moment. The silence was deep and gentle. Then he opened them again. "Maybe we don't need to go any further," he said. Babe lifted his head slightly. The stars reflected softly in his eyes. Paul smiled. "We can stay here," he whispered. The night grew deeper, the sky filled with stars. Thousands of them, quiet and steady. Paul lay down on the ground. He looked up at the sky. It felt endless. "I wonder," he said slowly, "if the world ever really ends." Babe rested beside him. The two of them, small beneath the great sky. The wind moved softly. The earth held them gently. Time passed quietly. No one knows how long. Some say Paul and Babe stayed there for many years. Some say they kept traveling, moving beyond places no one had seen. And some say that even now, on quiet nights, you can still feel them. If you stand in a wide open place and listen very carefully, you might hear something. A soft, distant sound, like slow footsteps on the earth, or a gentle breath in the wind. It is not loud, it is not clear, but it is there. A quiet reminder of a giant who walked slowly through the world, and a blue ox who never left his side. Together they shaped the land. They helped where they could, and they moved on without leaving noise behind. Only calm, only peace, only the feeling that something kind once passed through. The stars continued to shine, the wind continued to move, and the world continued to rest, just as it always has, just as it always will. So the story is finished. So I didn't know this story, so before I take this video, I watched Disney's animation Paul Bunyan on YouTube. So the picture was so cute. So thank you for watching. Good night.